This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian, and I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
So prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide if the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because this film is lit. Every teenager's nightmare, turning into her mother. It's Freaky Friday, and this film is lit. Hello and welcome back to This Film is Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. Taking a break from our summer series, you get a brief respite from the 50 Shades saga for a couple weeks here as we divert into some more shorter, easily digestible pieces of literature for a little bit before we finish up with our 50 Shades Freed episode in about a month or so. So look out for that in a little bit. But first, we have a really fun episode, a really fun movie to talk about today. If you have not seen it, we're going to give you a brief summary in Let Me Sum Up.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
Okay, so I'm gonna summarize the book first, which is quite different from the movie. So the book goes like this. A willful, disorganized teenage girl, Annabelle Andrews, awakens one Friday morning to find herself in the body of her mother, with whom she had argued the previous night. Suddenly in charge of taking care of the family's affairs and her younger brother Ben, and growing increasingly worried about the disappearance of Annabelle, who appeared to be herself in the morning but has gone missing after leaving the Andrews home, she enlists the help of her neighbor and childhood friend, Boris, though without telling him about her identity crisis. As the day wears on and Annabelle has a series of increasingly bizarre and frustrating adventures, she becomes gradually more appreciative of how difficult her mother's life is. Ben also disappears, apparently having gone off with a pretty girl whom Boris did not recognize, but Ben appeared to trust without hesitation. At the story's climax, Annabelle becomes overwhelmed by the difficulties of her situation, apparent disappearance of her mother, loss of the children, and the question of how her odd situation came about and when or whether it will be resolved. Finally, it is revealed that Annabelle's mother herself caused them to switch bodies through some unspecified means, and the mysterious teen beauty who took Ben was Mrs. Andrews in Annabelle's body, made much more attractive by a makeover Mrs. Andrews gave the body while using it, including the removal of Annabelle's braces, an appointment Annabelle had forgotten about and would have missed had she been the one in her body that day. The two switch back and all is well.
All right, and here is a brief summary of the film. Aspiring teenage music. A lot of this is sourced from Wikipedia, by the way, just so I don't get called out for plagiarizing.
Mine is also sourced from Wikipedia.
I somewhat plagiarized.
I did not want to summarize this book by myself, quite frankly.
I already had a hard time writing, and this is a warning, it's going to be confusing trying to refer to characters when they are in the body of a different, like, it's hard to know, do I refer to the person, so we'll get into that as we go, but there are a couple points in this summary that it might be a little confusing. We'll see. Aspiring teenage musician Anna Coleman lives with her widowed therapist mother, Tess, and younger brother, Harry. Tess is mere days away from marrying her new fiancé, Ryan, whom Anna is still having trouble accepting into her and her mother's life. At school, Anna is dealing with an unfair teacher who constantly gives her Fs, a former best friend who now picks on her constantly, and navigating a crush on a school staff member, Jake. This is directly from the Wikipedia summary, and I had to pause here and said, I did not realize he was a staff member? What? I thought he was supposed to be like a senior and she's like a junior.
I always thought he was a student who also happened to work there after school.
Yeah, because he does say I work there.
Yes, then the first time we see him, he's like carrying a notebook.
Yeah, he seems to be like a.
I think the Wikipedia is just leaving out some of the information.
It would not be the first time that the Wikipedia plot summary is like wrong. I've mentioned this before, or even if not wrong, is like weirdly it leaves things out or moves things around. Because I was like, what? No, he has to be. He's not supposed to be like
I think he's supposed to be a student who has like an after school job for a couple hours at the school.
Yeah, because he also works at like a coffee shop. Yeah. I felt like we didn't get it. We'll get into it. But I was like, I don't have enough of what's going on with him. But anyways, yeah, the Wikipedia literally just says school staff member Jake. And I was like, what? Okay, I don't know what's going on. But yeah, I think he is just like an older student who also works there. Anna's band, Pink Slip, has an audition for a big local show, but it falls on the same night as Tess's wedding rehearsal dinner, and she forbids Anna from going to the audition. While eating dinner at a Chinese restaurant, the restaurant owner's mother overhears the two arguing and gives them a fortune cookie that causes them to magically switch bodies overnight while they're asleep. The next morning, the two are horrified to realize they are trapped in each other's bodies and realize they have to spend that day experiencing the life of the other. Tess goes to school as Anna, where she meets Jake, sees the bullying Anna is receiving from Stacy, and calls out her teacher who was flunking her because she realizes that this is a guy that had asked her out, the mother, in high school and held a grudge against her for not accepting his proposition and is taking it out on Anna as a result. Meanwhile, Anna gives Tess's body a makeover and deals with her therapy patients, seeing the stress her mother goes through on a daily basis, dealing with the patients. Eventually, Jake spends time with Anna in Tess's body and falls for her. Jake falls for Tess, thinking it's Tess, whatever. Thinking he's falling in love with Anna's mom. Ultimately, at the rehearsal dinner, Ryan tells Anna, I have in quotes here, and that is Tess as Anna, to go to the audition, explains that he wants to be a supportive member of their family and urges Anna as Tess, to go and support her daughter. Anna plays guitar for her mom off stage while her mom as her is on stage. The band nails the audition. Woohoo! Back at the rehearsal dinner, Tess tells Anna to tell Ryan that they need to postpone the wedding until Anna is ready for that step in their relationship, because there's been discussion about how Anna hasn't really come to terms with her dad being gone and this new guy coming into their life and all that sort of thing. And Tess is like, hey, I've ignored that. I haven't been paying enough attention to that. Let's postpone the wedding until you're ready for it. But Anna, now seeing how happy that Ryan makes Tess and how good of a guy he actually is, instead proposes a toast, accepting Ryan into the family. This act of selfless love reverses the body switch. Tess marries Ryan, Anna starts dating Jake, and we all live happily ever after. The end. I want to get in. I don't have a note about it, but make sure we do not discuss the way the Jake and Anna plotline resolves in this movie, because I just have kind of questions. It just feels a little glossed. We'll get to it.
It's a little convenient.
We'll get to it. All right. We have, again, the triumphant return of Guess Who. So let's get to that.
Who are you?
No one of consequence.
I must know.
Get used to disappointment.
Okay, I think these should be pretty easy for you. They're also kind of funny. First one, I have brown hair, brown eyes, and brown fingernails. That's a joke, actually. I take a lot of baths. I'm 5 feet. I don't remember what I weigh, but I'm watching it. Although my mother says it's ridiculous, and I'm not completely mature in my figure yet.
Okay, well, I gotta go out on a limb and say that this would be Anna or / Annabelle, our main character.
Yeah. The daughter character.
Yeah, the daughter. Okay, that seemed pretty easy. She does not have brown hair.
No.
She has red hair. I mean, she has Lindsay Lohan's red hair with like
red
blonde
hair
highlights.
with the chunky blonde highlight of the early aughts.
I don't know what color Lindsay Lohan's eyes are, but I don't think they're brown.
I don't think so.
Hey, she's probably close to 5 foot. I don't know. Who knows? Anyways, pretty minimal description.
Yes. He has brown hair, which is a little short, but I've seen worse, and blue eyes. He's 6 feet, well, 5'11 and a half.
Okay, so I have a feeling, and I'm going to cheat a little by reading the next description and not guessing who I would maybe initially guess here, which would be Jake. But I think, or the love interest, shall we say, I think who this actually is, now I can't remember. Okay, I'm going to say, assuming that the mom has a new love interest or boyfriend or something, that this is that character.
This is the father figure.
Or
yeah.
father.
Yeah,
okay.
she just has a dad.
Oh, it's just her dad.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just her dad.
Okay, so there's not. Okay, and I mean, I have questions about that, but we'll get to it. And I only knew that because this next one, the description made it obvious that this was the love interest. So.
Yeah, the next description is he has chestnut hair and hazel eyes. I don't know how tall he is, but it's a good 3 inches more than I am. And whatever he weighs is just perfect.
There you go. I had to assume that description was related to the love interest and not related to like the father figure or whatever, or her. Neither of those were her younger brother or whatever. So that makes sense. I mean, I just kind of processed of elimination to that. Nobody really.
Yeah, nobody really looks
those.
like those.
And again, they're so minimal that it's not even really.
Yeah. It's not even really interesting.
Yeah. All right. I have a handful of questions, so we're going to get into those in Was That in the Book?
Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone.
The what?
Honestly, don't you two read?
So when we open up, we're introduced and establishing our characters, and our main two characters are Tess, the mom, and Anna, the daughter. And we're establishing that they are very different people, as is often the case between parents and children. And Anna is a little bit messy, and it would seem this kind of seemingly dies. I don't know. It seems like they establish this as like a thing early on. It never really like they don't really continue through with this, but or like right away at the beginning, we see a lot of how organized Tess is. Like she's got all of their phones like lined up and charging, and like it just seems she seems like and she has like she's like doing yoga. She's like a very like put together, organized person, in contrast with her daughter who just sleeps in and is a standard teenager. And I wanted to know if that dynamic of the mom being like a super, I hesitate to call her neat freak because I don't think like it doesn't go to that extent in the film, but they're definitely letting us know visually that like she's a very organized person.
Yes.
And I want to know if that dynamic comes from the book.
It does. I would say as far as the mom character, not to the extent that the movie depicts. The mom in the book runs the household, and her skill with organization versus Annabelle's lack of organizational skills is a point of conflict in the book. As far as Anna, I would say the movie goes like less so on her being like messy and disorganized.
Yeah, no, she just seems like a pretty standard teenager.
Yeah.
Like her room's a bit messy, but other than that, and like she sleeps too long, but like that's every teen. Like that's just she doesn't seem particularly unorganized or disorganized compared to, or you know, beyond any like a normal teenager.
I've seen worse bedrooms.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. So again, establishing Anna's character, we find out that she's very much into music. In fact, so much so that she plays guitar and is in a band that is trying to break out. And I wanted to know if the element, so when was this book written?
This book was written in 1972.
So yeah, well, not that people weren't in bands then, but I will say that a girl being like in a band would probably not be as much of a thing, or at least wouldn't be written about as much in this kind of story then. But I wanted to know if Annabelle being in a band or having a hobby maybe that her mom disapproves of or anything like that comes from the book as a point of problem between them.
No, none of that is from the book. She's not in a band. She doesn't have like a specific hobby that her mom dislikes in the book. But I love this element of the movie. It's one of my favorite things about the movie. Take Me Away, which is the song that the band sings, still in heavy rotation for me. A lot of this soundtrack is still in heavy rotation for me, actually. I also really appreciate that the movie managed to hold itself back from making Lindsay Lohan the lead singer in the band. I feel like her character doesn't have lead singer energy.
No, I agree. She doesn't. I mean, she does sing the song at the end of the movie in the credits.
Yeah, but it's at her mom's wedding, so that makes sense.
Yeah, and I agree. It does. Her character definitely fits better as like just a member of the band than as like the lead singer. She doesn't seem like that kind of person. Also, I guess the movie dealt with this better than it seemed like it was going to initially. And I like the kind of nuance with which the movie handles the mom's relationship to the daughter being in the band. It's not that she like hates it or anything. She tolerates it because it is noisy and blah, blah, blah. But it was kind of interesting to me that like she didn't realize how good they were. Like,
yeah,
for a a high school garage band that is just like if you were the parents of those kids, you'd be like, oh, we got to get them in front of like they're like a legitimate band.
Yeah,
again,
they're
it's not
like really good.
It's not like they're amazing necessarily, but like as things go, a bunch of high schoolers playing in a garage, they're like incredible. And you would be, yeah, if you were at all involved, you would be trying to get them, you know, or it would at least be supportive to the extent of realizing that they're quite good, which her mom does not seem to, at least early on, which I thought was interesting. So speaking of the band, and I guess this is already kind of spoiled, and maybe there's something else that takes the place of this. But I wanted to know so the big inciting conflict in the film that leads to the swap, basically, and now you've already said that the swap that's how we open in the book. But the big inciting incident that leads to the swap in the film is that Anna wants to play at this audition that is happening on the same night as her mom's dress rehearsal for her wedding, and so she won't let her go. And this causes the big fight and is what leads to the woman at the Chinese restaurant giving them the magic spell or whatever. So they switch bodies. And I wanted to know if, and again, we know at this point it's not a band thing, but is there a similar inciting incident that is the thing that leads to the swap? Like disagreement or whatever.
No, the book just has this general conflict of Annabelle and her mom like not getting along and butting heads. Like they do fight. Annabelle recounts for us that they fought the night before,
right?
But it wasn't about anything specific. It was just in general, like, you're treating me like a baby. You don't let me do anything on my own. Classic. Blah blah blah. Yeah, like classic parent-child conflict. So I do think it was the right choice by the film to pick something big to focus that conflict on.
Yeah, and the thing I thought was really interesting in the film is that it's like a totally valid reason to skip. I was like, it's a rehearsal dinner. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, I get not who cares entirely, but like also, who cares? Like, who cares? It's just like she's gonna be at your wedding still. Like, this is crazy.
I agree with you. And then Tess not letting her go to the audition gets even stupider at the end when you find out that it's literally right down the street from the wedding rehearsal venue.
And you find out she only needed to be gone for 30 minutes or whatever. It's not like they had to perform a whole hour and a half long show, or they performed one song and it was like she didn't need to be there the whole time. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. But I do think that it's a really good example of the kind of thing that a selfish parent does. Like, this is important to me, so therefore you must treat it with equal importance, despite the fact that you're an autonomous person with different needs and wants. Also, I'm going to take this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity away from your friends, too.
Yeah. And it's not that the movie doesn't realize it's ridiculous, because that's the whole point, is it ultimately is that her mom realizing she was, being ridiculous, because also it's also the movie's having us focus on the single event and making it so obvious to the audience that this is ridiculous of the mom to not let her do this. It just shows that she's so moderately, which they have multiple conversations and one big conversation about this at the end of the film-ish, about how she has not been invested in
not at all
in what Anna has been doing and like what's going on in her life. She has kind of been hands off to some extent and doesn't realize how important and like good of an opportunity this is, and that sort of thing. And again, it's the whole point. Like that's what Jamie Lee Curtis's character learns over the course of the film. But yeah, it is one of those where you're like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong? But that, on the other hand, and we'll get to this, I'm sure, is that I think the movie does a very good job of not making either of balancing nuance wise. Like, you know, Lindsay Lohan acts like an obnoxious teenager.
Yeah,
and Jamie Lee Curtis is not doing a good job being a parent to her in this instance. But so like the conflict feels real and feels balanced-ish. While obviously the mom is, we'll get to it, but I thought that was very well handled, but not from the book. So we get to the big thing, which we talked about this a little bit in the prequel, the actual transformation or the swap and what causes it to happen. And in the film, as I mentioned in the synopsis, they're at a Chinese restaurant, and the owner's mother at the Chinese restaurant sees them arguing and apparently has some sort of spell that she is able to cast using a fortune cookie. I realize what I'm saying sounds obscenely racist because it is.
Yeah.
And then gives them this fortune cookie, and this is what prompts the magic spell, the curse, whatever you want to call it, to happen, where they switch bodies. And I wanted to know if that's how that all happens in the book, or if the movie just invented this racist backstory for no reason.
So I'm going to call this one better in the book because the movie did invent this racist backstory for seemingly no reason.
Sweet.
In the book, it's the mom that makes the switch happen, but it's never explained how or why she possesses such powers. So the book's explanation isn't satisfying at all, but it's also not really racist.
They definitely needed to come up with something, especially because we're not just waking up with them already switched, like so they needed to come up with something. But this definitely feels like a holdover from a movie that would have been written in the early 80s, and not a film written in 2003.
And Tess also refers to it as strange Asian voodoo at one point, which is super rough.
Not even consistently racist at that point, just like just mishmashing things together.
I don't know. It is weird, and we talked about this in the prequel that one of the reviews was like, this seems like really out of left field
a lot of
for
reviews,
the movie. And I have to agree, like, I think you're right. It does feel like for a movie that is overall what's the word I'm looking for? Not progressive necessarily, but like is overall pretty like feels like open-minded and open to like exploring things.
Yeah.
It does feel like a weird, like, it feels like the ghost of a writer from the 60s appeared in the writer's room.
It just, because you would definitely see things like this, like in the 80s a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not even that you wouldn't see them in, 90s and 2000s or even today, depending on what, but definitely super way more common in movies, like in the, Gremlins is I haven't seen Gremlins in a long time, but the whole premise of that, I think, banks around them going to like an Asian like market and some smoke-filled room. Some guy gives them a gremlin. Like so. Or
thinking of something like which John Hughes movie is it?
Oh well, you're thinking of it's 16 Candles.
16 Candles, with the character with the super racist name,
right? And that, so it's definitely the thing that feels more 80s for sure. And it is. I almost wonder if. Because I don't think the writers of this, I'm trying to remember back to the prequel episode when I was looking at the writers of this were not like big. Well, actually, one of them was. One of them wrote like Overboard in the one of them was like kind of came from Hollywood in the 80s and stuff and was just still writing movies. So that could be part of it. Is that one of the writers just kind of still had a holdover from the era where that was just a thing that like nobody batted an eye at. But yeah, it's not good. It's not good, no. And it's unfortunate because you could have done so many other things.
Yeah, well, and I had a side note here is that I do like the idea of tying in the mother-daughter conflict because we see a similar, like not similar, but kind of a dynamic between the mother and daughter at the Chinese restaurant where they're kind of like butting heads with each other, but it's obvious that they have like a more mature relationship with each other. And I think that could have been a great additional story element. But there were better ways to accomplish this aspect of the story without using the magical person of color trope.
Yeah, and I think even if they had, and I'm not saying it would be good, but even if they had kept the exact same thing, but just done it in a way that wasn't like every stereotype possible, where we just get gong sounds anytime there's an Asian person on screen and they speak with and I don't know for sure what accent wise, but it feels like arch like fake Asian American accents. I'm not saying it necessarily is, but and just a lot about it, and it being literally like fortune. It's like you could even if you were going to keep everything else about it the same, like in terms of the nuts and bolts of like they go to this Chinese restaurant and there's a mother and a daughter there, and the mother like does something, it would still be problematic, but you could have executed it in a way that wasn't like the worst thing ever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like if you had portrayed them as actual 3D like normal human beings and not caricatures of people that own a Chinese restaurant, it would at least be a little better. I don't know. Again, I'm not saying it would be. There's just, you could come up with a million other ways to do it. That,
you would think.
that don't lean into these weird stereotypes. But yeah.
No, I do have to give the movie this though. The book starts off with Annabelle already in her mother's body, and I think that giving us time to get to know both characters before they switch was the right choice.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You almost have to, especially from the performance side. It just adds so much, even. Obviously, thematically, and letting us get to know the characters as themselves first just makes a lot of sense. And
set up some conflict for each one.
Set up some conflicts and stuff first makes a lot of sense. But even purely apart from that, letting us see Lindsay Lohan playing herself and Jamie Lee Curtis playing herself as a primer before we get the switch and get to see the other two playing each other, basically, see them playing each other, just makes for that, once the switch happens, to be much more interesting acting wise, to see what they're doing and how they're trying to like kind of mimic each other or whatever. I thought that, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, for sure.
There's this thing that happens like 2 or 3 times in this movie that felt really specific, and I almost wondered if it came from like some art from the book or something, because it's like a very striking visual image, and it is that in the morning Lindsay Lohan does not want to get out of bed because she's a sleepy teenager, and so Jamie Lee Curtis literally just pulls her out of bed, but she holds onto the bars like of her headboard, and so we get this shot of her like trying to yank her out of the bed, and then it reverses once they switch. It's Lindsay Lohan trying to pull Jamie Lee Curtis out of the bed, and it was such a distinct thing that I mean, it's a fun visual gag, but it also, I was like, I wonder if that comes from the book in some way. That felt like something that might be a reference to the book.
It's not.
Okay.
There aren't any illustrations, at least not in this edition that I have.
Yeah.
Which is the original 1972 edition. So I don't know if maybe there were illustrations done later, but that is not anything that happened in the book.
Yeah, well, if her like not, or oversleeping or whatever, or being tough to wake up in the morning is not an element from the book, then it probably wouldn't make sense. But I was just imagining that looks in my head. I was like, that feels like that could be the cover art of a book
for sure.
from that period. You know what I mean? Like the daughter, like yanking the mom out, trying to yank her out of bed. It just felt like it could have come from art from the book. But okay, fair enough. Once the transformation actually does happen, we get one of the lines that I remembered vividly. I've never seen this movie, but I remember this line because it was in all the trailers and all the commercials and everything. And that is Jamie Lee Curtis looks in the mirror. In this moment, she is Anna in her mom's body, and she looks in the mirror and says, "I'm old. I'm so old. I'm like the Crypt Keeper." And it's a very funny little moment. And I want to know if any of that line came from the book, or her being very upset that she's old now came from the book.
No, that line nor the kind of idea behind it. Neither of those things are from the book, but I do love that line. Fully anticipate saying it a lot as I continue to age.
Yeah, it's good. And like I said, it was is in the trailer. I think I included it in the prequel. Like when I include the bit from the trailer, I'm pretty sure it was in there. But yeah, I remembered, like I said, I've never seen this movie, and I remembered that line. I was like, yep. So once they switch, Anna has to go to work as her mom. But before she gets to work, she's walking down the street and sees a store and decides, I have my mom's credit cards. I'm buying clothes. I'm going shopping, and I'm getting a haircut. And she gives her mom a makeover as her mom. Gets her hair cut even shorter than it already was. It's not like it was already pretty short, but she gets it cut even shorter and dyed a little bit. Gives her like the blonde highlights.
She gives her like an edgy little pixie cut. Basically.
Gets her ear pierced and then gives her like a hippie dress kind of deal. And I wanted to know if that comes from the book, if Anna gives her mom a makeover.
So there is a makeover element in the book, but I'm going to call this one better in the movie. So the movie flips the makeover aspect by having daughter make over mother instead of the other way around. And I mean, yes, either way, it's a violation of bodily autonomy. I get that. But the power dynamic and the messaging in the book, I think, just make it way grosser.
You're right.
Because you have the mother making over the daughter's body.
Yes.
In the book.
Okay.
Which is coming from someone who has that power dynamic over the other person. Which is not the case in the movie.
No, The mom already kind of controls to some extent what the daughter can do with her body. So, yeah.
And then the messaging in the book is basically, look, I made you into a proper girl who looks pretty.
Right.
And everyone's fine with that.
Yeah.
And to me, gross. It's pretty gross.
Yeah, it's definitely gross. I'm definitely, the movie version, I think, still some issues potentially. But it's definitely...
It feels a little more palatable to me coming from someone who is maybe still a little bit immature and might not understand the full scope of what they're doing, as opposed to a parent doing that to a child.
No, I would agree with that for sure. Absolutely. And it is a lot more fun. I think it's just a lot more I'm imagining watching that in the movie and just being like, oh, it's terrible. And I mean, the movie kind of gets us that in the sense, or tries to gives us a little bit of that, of the similar idea where when they're getting dressed and Lindsay Lohan is wearing
she's wearing
ugly
khakis and
she's dressed
up.
She's dressed like Bella from
she is
from Twilight. But she's got her khakis and her button down blue shirt. She looks like a Sprint Mobile employee or whatever. And it's oh, you look so much better or whatever. Oh, these pants are so cute or whatever. And this is the most bland outfit possible. So it gives us a little bit of that without, and in that scene it's fine because it's just clothes, it's whatever.
Just change back.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely I would agree that that's a better change for the movie. Is there a plot line in the book where one of Anna's teachers is failing her because her mom turned him down for a date years ago? That's a wild plot line that I was not expecting where that was going. Really interesting. Wanted to know if it came from the book.
It's not from the book. There is a conflict with her teacher in the book. She's not doing particularly well in school. But in the book, it's all Annabelle's fault because she's lazy and careless.
Okay. I'm getting a vibe for what this book is.
Are you getting a vibe?
I'm getting a vibe for what this book is, and I think I hate it.
Oh, I have thoughts.
This feels like some real weird...
I think the phrase you might be looking for is wish fulfillment.
Yeah, as I was to say, does the author of this book have a daughter?
She does.
Oh, no!
She has 2, actually.
Gross. That's terrible. Oh, no. Okay. Well, we'll get more into that, I'm sure. But no, the whole plot with the teacher thing, not a
thing.
Or the whole dating thing. It's not. Yeah. But in the book, it's Anna's just sucks. So
yes.
Okay. We get a scene in the film where Anna, as her mom, has to go to a parent-teacher conference with her brother, Harry, and his teacher. Harry, right? I think is his name?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she goes in, and she's being very flippant at first and, kind of not making fun of, but, just being flippant and insinuating that she's oh, he's kind of Harry's dealing with bullies, and she's yeah, he probably deserves it or what. She's just being, cause she does not like her younger brother. But then at the end of this parent teacher conference, the teacher says, oh, I'd like to show you this letter that he wrote, or this assignment he did where he wrote about somebody he admires or whatever, and he wrote it about his sister. And then the teacher gives Anna as her mom the letter, and Anna reads it, and it's a very sweet little couple paragraphs about how much he looks up to his older sister and stuff, and how she's so cool because she's in a band. Very touching scene. And then she comes out and talks to Harry, and they kind of have a cute little conversation. I thought that whole segment was adorable and great, and I wanted to know if any of it came from the book.
So all of those elements are in the book, but we're going to call this one better in the movie again. So what happens in the book, there is a forgotten parent-teacher conference, but it's for Annabelle, not her younger brother, which is where she finds out that she's horrible and lazy and is failing everything.
Okay.
And then after that, she does have a conversation with her little brother as her mom while in her mom's body, where they talk about how... her little brother's no, I really love Annabelle, blah, blah, blah. Look up to her a lot.
Okay, so that element's there.
Yes. But I think that switching the parent-teacher conference to be about Harry and then using that to segue into how he feels about Anna and their relationship is a much better narrative track to take.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Well, especially because we lose the fact of that Anna just is terrible or whatever and is bad at life. Oh boy. So yeah, I would agree. I think like I said, I thought that scene was really sweet. And in particular, it's wild, and we'll get into it, I'm sure. But these movies are so good at tricking your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Watching this movie the whole time, my brain would constantly flicker over to like, man, Lindsay Lohan's doing a really good job pretending to be her mom when I was watching Jamie Lee Curtis. Does that make any sense? Like, and obviously my brain knows that it's just Jamie Lee Curtis, but like, I don't know, something in my brain like short circuits and like inserts, like my brain just like full sail buys into the premise.
Yeah.
Like briefly until my brain remembers that what are you talking about? That is just Jamie Lee Curtis acting like Lindsay Lohan, acting like Jamie Lee Curtis, which I think it's just that there's the layers of like you're several layers deep there.
Yeah.
And then when you see that, it tricks my brain into almost believing it.
Yeah.
Like in a weird way.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's very strange. But in that scene, Jamie Lee Curtis does a really good job. And I thought it was all really cute. So we mentioned Jake, the love interest in the film. At this point, Jamie Lee Curtis, Tess, meets up with him somehow. And Anna as Tess meets up with him somehow. Don't remember where. Oh, she goes into a coffee shop.
Yeah, and sees him at the coffee shop.
And he's working there. And they sit down and they're like talking about music and stuff. And during this interaction, because she's able to be herself and talk about stuff without feeling self-conscious because she's not herself, he starts like falling for her. But to him, he is falling for Jamie Lee Curtis. And I wanted to know if the love interest of the daughter falling for the mom, but with the mind of the daughter, is something that comes from the book. Because this whole plot line, I was unsure of how I felt about.
Okay, so Annabelle does have a crush in the book. His name is Boris. And
Boris the delivery man?
Yes, Boris the delivery man. And she does hang out with him while she's in her mother's body, and he does start to like get a crush on who he thinks is the mom.
Right.
So all of that is from the book.
Okay.
But I am going to call this better in the movie because I think there are a couple things that make it more palatable. First off, Jamie Lee Curtis's and Chad Michael Murray's performances, I think, help a lot.
Okay. I mean, they're both fine, yeah. I don't know if it helped me much. I still felt very weird about all of this.
I think giving them music as something concrete to bond over also helped. Because they kind of just like hang out and like play a game in their living room in the book, and it's a little weird.
Okay.
I also thought that having him interact with the mom as Anna also added more dimension to that plot point than what we get in the book.
Yeah, I mean, I liked that. I liked that he interacted with both of them and that the mom kind of ends up liking him in their interaction. I still just, I don't know. The way he like pursues her. My biggest issue isn't even the way he pursues her. Like it's fine that like, he's like 18 or whatever, 7, whatever. And she's never like, and again, it's Lindsay Lohan, which makes it even more confusing. But like, she's never coming on to him or anything necessarily. But like, my biggest issue with this whole plot point, despite apart from like it just feeling weird, was the way it resolves. He's just like all of a sudden stops like falling for the mom and falls back in love with Lindsay Lohan, seemingly at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
In a way that, and again, they're teenagers, I get that. But it just felt very, like, he's, like, obsessed with her. He's, like, chasing her around. Like, he's following her around town to, like, the wedding, like, to everywhere. And then at the end of the movie, it's just like, oh, yesterday was weird, right? Or it was freaky. He does say he goes, yesterday was freaky. And they're like, yeah, let's start over. And it's like, well, what? You were like dead set on like getting with her mom yesterday. And it just dissipates, and then all of a sudden he's just back into, and I get it's like prompted by him seeing her play guitar, I guess. Like,
I think you could.
I don't know. It just all felt a little weird to me.
The way that plotline wraps up is glossed over, and I think that's probably just due to the constraints of storytelling.
Yeah.
I think you could read it as he just like realized how weird he was being.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or I think you could potentially read it as like there was also like some other effect of this like magic. And then once they switched back, he kind of like snapped out of it.
And that could be because, it was just one of those frustrating things where I was watching. And again, it's the only part of the movie that I was frustrated with. And because it wasn't a big deal. Like, I'm like, I'm willing to like kind of like roll my eyes at it and just let it be. But because, at the end, I was like, I just want her to be able to tell him what happened somehow. Like I want, because I was thinking of like, you're basically doing like the Spider-Man storyline kind of with like Mary Jane or whatever, where she loves Spider-Man but is friends with Peter Parker.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like he's like falling for her mom, but it's actually her,
right? And
it's the same thing like when Mary Jane or whoever falls for Spider-Man. It's Peter Parker, but they don't realize it's Peter Parker that they're falling for. So we're getting that same thing, but in Spider-Man, ultimately, Peter Parker goes, oh, I am Spider-Man. And they're like, oh, you've been in love with me the whole time or whatever. Whereas in this, there isn't that thing where he realizes, oh, I was in love with you the whole time. You were just in the body of your mother.
Right.
And so it just feels like he just like, it just kind of like, and he just switches to being in love. I don't know.
No, I agree with you. I don't think it's a strong point in the film.
Yeah. And it's not a big deal. It's because it leads to some fun scenes and I get it. It just felt like, I was like, I just wish there was a better way to resolve it. Like, I just wish it had resolved in a way that felt more like believable. Which again, in a movie where people are switching bodies, whatever, it just felt like the least sort of tied up in a way that worked for me, whereas everything else felt great. And I was just like, all right, sure, whatever. I could just write it off to like teenagers are stupid and like impulsive and whatever, like fine. I guess anyways, but it does come from the book, the body swap crush, the boyfriend thing.
Yes.
Okay. Wild. I would not have expected that. I thought that was going to be for sure like a movie edition. So if she's not in a band, which we've established she's not, I wanted to know if there was another big event conflict at the end that led, that was like, with the wedding and the blah, blah, blah. Do we have anything like that at the end where everything culminates? Or the wedding rehearsal, I guess, and the audition.
Really? The end of the book gets kind of chaotic. The pacing in this book was also real weird. So Annabelle, in her mom's body, has Boris come upstairs because they live in like an apartment building and he lives like one floor down.
Boris
or whatever.
is Jake in this.
Yes, Boris is Jake.
Okay.
So she has him come upstairs to babysit the younger brother so that she can go to the parent-teacher conference. But then when she gets back, her brother is just gone. Now, Boris says that he left with a hot chick who ends up being the mom driving Annabelle's body.
Okay.
So Annabelle calls the police, who don't believe her because babysitters can't be male and kidnappers can't be female.
This is true. This is true. This is a true thing about reality.
True thing about,
like how all dogs are boys and all cats are girls.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then Annabelle has like a meltdown, and then her mom shows back up and switches them back.
Okay. So
that's how the book ends.
It's kind of like
it kind of goes out with a fizz.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Well, it sounds like this is not the case, but I'll ask it anyways. Is it, quote, an act of selfless love, end quote, that will allow them to switch back?
Definitely calling this better in the movie because it's literally not anything in the book. Like, her mom as her comes back home and is like, so what did we learn? And then switches them back.
So her mom's is like a witch.
I guess.
Or something.
It's never explained.
Or like has magic
how
powers.
she does this. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it's her mom's doing
Yes.
somehow. Okay. Interesting. Wild. Yeah, definitely better in the movie. That's terrible.
Yeah.
We'll get into it, but that's terrible. I hate everything you've said about this book. I hate it. And my last question is if anything from Anna, and I have Anna in quotes here because it is Anna as Tess. Sorry, it is. Yes, Anna as Tess gives a big speech, a toast at the end. Again, my brain even struggles with this because my brain is reading it as it is depicted in the. Anyways, my brain just buys in on this, and I have a hard time even talking about it. But Anna. And I think there's another layer because I'm also thinking about it as Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah.
So that even that adds like almost another layer of confusing to it. But anyways, Jamie Lee Curtis, Anna as Tess, Anna in Tess's body gives a big toast where, and we're watching it as Tess.
Yes.
Or we're watching it as Anna. As Tess in Anna's body. Which it's like, it's just layers that make it very hard to like talk about. But anyways. Anna in Tess's body gives this speech about how basically Tess in Anna's body urges Anna in Tess's body to postpone the wedding. Tell Ryan they got to postpone the wedding because Anna's not ready for it yet. And then Anna gets up there and says, actually, I am ready. Basically, I can see how happy you make. Really nice speech. I wanted to know if any of that came from any of the speech at the end came from the book because I thought it was really sweet and incredibly well acted by both of them. I almost teared up several times. Like this is really well done. And I wanted to know if any of that came from the book.
No, none of that is from the book.
Of course not. Why would we? Why not? I mean, why would we have any of that good stuff in the book, apparently? Oh, well, we'll find out what the good stuff we did have in the book in our next segment. I didn't have a Lost in Adaptation because it wasn't pretty.
Yeah, it's not super hard to follow.
Not super hard to follow, even if it is hard to talk about. It's not super hard to follow. But I do want to hear what you had to say that you thought were better in the book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
Actually, most of my better in the book things are just small issues with the movie.
Yes.
So, first off, I think the movie's depiction of Evan, who's one of Tessa's psychiatric patients, is questionable.
Yeah, that's also definitely like
not saying that mental illness couldn't manifest that way,
or at least
as
similar
we see him, or something similar.
Yeah.
But it is, I think, pretty stereotypical in a way that's problematic and dated at best.
And definitely not sympathetic at all.
Yeah.
Like it's just played for jokes, played for laughs. Like, look how not eccentric even, but
like how cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah, look how crazy this guy is, and how he can't even function. Isn't that hilarious? It's like not really, but it's definitely not ideal.
This is like a really small, inconsequential thing, but I think Anna would have known who Stevie Nicks is.
I would agree with that 100%.
I get the joke.
Right.
But as a character moment, it doesn't track.
That feels like a punch-up, like, writer's room joke we gotta...
this dumb teenager probably doesn't even know who Stevie Nicks is.
Right, it's like with the whole... Yeah.
And, like, I will grant that it's probably not someone she would have listened to extensively, maybe, but music is one of her core character traits, and she obviously learned about music from her dad, and he surely would have known and introduced her to Fleetwood Mac.
You would have
I mean, she knows the Rolling Stones later, and both of those fall under classic rock, so, like, what are we doing
And not
here?
even knows Rolling Stones. She knows... She says, "Get up there and be Keith Richards."
Yeah.
Or whatever. Like, it's like
she
knows
knows
members
the band
of the
names.
band. Like, it's like, I 100% she would... And she's into, like, more archaic... her music taste is more eclectic and like again, she's like a music girl. Like she has like interesting, music taste. It's not like I 100% agree that she would know who Stevie Nicks was.
One quick line from the book that I did think was funny. After the younger brother disappears and Boris is like, well, I don't know who he left with, but she was super hot. Anna Annabelle, as her mom, turns to him and just very sarcastically is like, "You're commended for your great taste in kidnappers." And I thought that was decently funny.
That's a good line. That's a good line. And that's it. So let's find out what Katie thought was better in the movie.
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
Okay, I have a big long list here. I love the movie's addition of Stacey Hinkhouse.
Yes.
The former close friend that you grew apart from, and then for some reason it got antagonistic. Very relatable for much of the target audience of this film.
I can imagine, yeah. And I will say that it that actress, she was in I was like, I recognize her from something. I remember having a crush on her when I was 12.
I think she was in quite a few movies around this era. She was in one
specific thing that I'm trying to remember now because I Googled her name like a couple times. She was in a Cinderella Disney original, like
was she in a Cinderella story?
Was that what it is? I think that's what it is.
The one with Hilary Duff?
Yes, she was in a Cinderella story.
Okay.
She plays a character named Shelby in that. She's also in Christmas with the Cranks, which is
I've deleted that movie from my memory.
Yeah, which we did. And maybe the daughter or something.
Yeah, she was probably the daughter.
And there was a handful. She's been in quite a bit of random things.
Yeah. But she's the mean girl in A Cinderella Story too. Yes. I remember that now.
She was in one episode of NCIS, which I assume is related to the fact that what's his name is in this movie, Mark Harmon or whatever. She was also in Dodgeball, a true underdog story. She was one of the characters in that. An episode of Drake and Josh. And then a handful of other things. But anyways, I remember her from A Cinderella Story because I remember watching that. Anyways, I was like, she looks so familiar.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was a fun dynamic.
Yes. I enjoyed the switch of the mother character from a stay-at-home mom to a like high-powered career mom.
Mm-hmm.
A disclaimer that I don't think there's anything wrong with being a stay-at-home mom. I just think that the conflict arising from this element is more interesting in the movie than it is in the book. I also think it's an interesting study on how motherhood was typically depicted in two different time periods. Yeah. We have our stay-at-home mom from the early 70s, while the career mom was very popular in 90s and 2000s media.
Yeah. It also just makes more sense when you have... Well, I don't want to say it makes more sense, but it definitely leads to a conflict that's compelling when part of the conflict is that she thinks her daughter is not motivated, is like, you know, kind of a slacker, and like, because at least in the beginning of the movie, she kind of assumes like, oh, you're not applying yourself at school. What is this? You got an F in this class or whatever.
Yeah.
And then like her sleeping in, like there's like a more direct personality conflict there between
like her
those
mom
two.
is very type A in the movie. But I also appreciate that the movie didn't go hard on the like she's a bad mom because she has a career aspect.
That doesn't go hard. It does not only doesn't go hard on that, it doesn't imply that at all.
I don't think it does at all. No. I could see where you could maybe make an argument for it, but it would be a weak argument.
No, yeah, I don't think that's at all the case. I think the movie definitely is totally cool. Like no, the issue is just that. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could. The issue is just that she's not been as invested in her daughter's life, but it doesn't feel like the movie is saying because of her job or anything like that. It's just saying just because she just hasn't been. She's just been
I really like the movie's depiction of Anna's day at school. When it actually is Anna, not Anna as her mom. I like how it lays out all of her problems in a way that's interesting and dynamic, but it's still really clear and easy to understand, so you know exactly what we're going to come back to later.
The script is very tight in that regard. It definitely sets up the checklist of like, okay, former friend who's now a bully, that's one thing. Teacher who keeps giving her F's for no reason, boom, that's the second thing. The boy she has a crush on, boom, third thing. All right, there you go. Those are the three things.
I really love the way, and you mentioned this earlier, but I love the way that this movie depicts the conflict between Anna and Tess. Like, they're both being selfish.
Yes.
And we do get a little bit of like kind of equal, like they kind of equally have to learn something. But the way that the movie goes in on teaching the parent a hard lesson about listening to and showing up for her kid was just so incredibly satisfying to watch as a 14-year-old.
Well, yeah. And because it goes in on both of them being selfish, but then the movie goes, hey, spoiler, she's a teenager.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
Like, you're an adult.
Be a parent.
Yeah.
Be an adult.
You don't get to be like, well, my daughter's being a selfish little whatever because you're an adult. It's not how that works. Yeah, I thought it presents it somewhat two-sided and somewhat, like there are things that Anna is doing that are not great, and that or at least in like her relationship with her brother and like how she talks to her mom and stuff or whatever. But the movie is very clearly being like, but she
Well, and I think too, so a lot of the stuff that Anna is dealing with and that she's handling it poorly because she is a teenager who needs her parent to help her, and she's not getting that help.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I thought that was very well done. Because you're right, it is, and it sounds like what the book does, which is like literally the opposite, which is just like, and it's like it's. The movie remembers that one of the two people in this relationship is a grown adult. Yeah. And the other one is like...
Is a child,
16, 17 or whatever. Spoilers, one of those people should be better at handling this than the other one. And, yes, they both need to have some time and learn a little bit about each other. That's very helpful and good. But one of these people is like more at fault here than the other one. Yeah. And it's the one who's an adult.
So continuing our summer of weird, uncomfortable references to dental hygiene.
Oh.
The movie cuts a weird teeth brushing moment after Annabelle wakes up in her mother's body.
A weird teeth brushing
I'm just gonna read it to you.
Okay.
What I saw in that mirror was absolutely my mother from top to toe, complete with no braces on the teeth. Now, ordinarily, I don't bother to brush too often. It's a big nuisance with all those wires. But my mother's teeth looked like a fun job, and besides, if she was willing to do a terrific thing like turning her body over to me like that, the least I could do was take care of her teeth for her.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. I wish you guys could see the face Brian's making right now. The book is all full of weird passages like that, where the daughter's like, this is really cool.
Man, my mom's body is super awesome. I like it. That's weird. This is very weird.
Said no 13-year-old ever.
It's very weird. It's very, very clearly written by a...
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very strange. Also, I had braces. I mean, brushing, while not amazing with braces, was not that big of a deal. Flossing's a pain, but like brushing your teeth is not. I brushed my teeth just as much as I always do when I had braces. You wear out your toothbrushes faster, but like it's not hard to do. It's a weird thing. I don't know, whatever.
I just want to talk for a minute about how both of the lead actresses do such a good job of playing each other.
Oh yeah, no, they're fantastic.
Like Lindsay Lohan is playing it so serious and subtle, and she really nails it.
Yeah, she really does a great job.
Jamie Lee Curtis plays it like a little more exaggerated. It's not quite as spot on to Anna's character as depicted by Lindsay Lohan, but it's so funny that it's totally fine.
Yeah.
Like Jamie Lee Curtis clearly had so much fun making this movie, and it's very endearing.
Yeah, it is funny that you mentioned that, because I agree, at least to some extent. And it's funny because in the prequel, we talked about how Jamie Lee Curtis got a lot of, and people mentioned Lindsay Lohan too, but specifically Jamie Lee Curtis got a lot of like kudos from critics and stuff about her performance. But I don't think you're wrong that she doesn't actually quite do Lindsay Lohan's
Yeah, she does like a little bit more of an exaggerated version of it.
Which you kind of have to. And which also, when you're playing a role like that, like it's anytime you're doing like like mimicking somebody or like doing like an impression, it's gonna be amplified a little bit in order to like sell what it is that you're doing. Because I think that also goes the same way with Lindsay Lohan doing Jamie Lee Curtis. She probably oversells a little bit of like the reserved, like, I don't know, nature of, not reserved, but like the I don't even know the right word for it, but I think she oversells doing Jamie Lee Curtis a little bit. I think they both do that again for the sake of humor and just to make it more fun. But 100% agree that Jamie Lee Curtis is having a blast, and it's very enjoyable to watch.
So the book stays with Annabelle the entire time. Her mom doesn't show back up until the very end to unveil her makeover. I thought that spending time with both characters in the movie was the right choice. So much more interesting and more dynamic for both characters. We're giving both of them an arc. It's great basic storytelling.
Yes, for sure.
The comeuppance for the English teacher, Mr. Bates, has always been so satisfying to me. It's a little silly.
It is.
But like thinking back to being a teenager and how I felt in situations with adults where they're very clearly being unfair and there's really nothing you can do about it, that kind of thing, just very satisfying to watch.
Yeah, for sure. But it is the whole thing I thought was a little silly because like he's not even good. I mean, to be fair, like whatever, it's a comedy. Like he's not even good at being a jerk. Like give her like D's or C, like mix it. You're just gonna give her an
believable.
F. Yeah, make it believable if you're gonna try to take it out on this kid and not just give her an F every time for no reason. But yeah, it's. Anyways, I thought that was kind of silly, but it is that scene where she gets to tell him off is fun.
I love everything about the TV interview scene.
Yes,
cheesy in the best way.
A lot of fun. Was this post Tom Cruise getting up on Oprah's couch?
Oh, I have no idea.
Because it had a similar energy at times, and I was like,
did Tom Cruise? When did Tom Cruise jump on the couch?
Close to this time period, or close.
Oh, 2005.
Okay,
was
so
when he jumped on the. No, it was before.
That's what I mean. This movie was before.
Yeah.
Huh. All right. I mean, not that it's like.
So Tom Cruise was just imitating Jamie Lee Curtis in this movie. Glad we know that now.
Apparently, yeah.
Any issues with the love interest storyline aside, Chad Michael Murray screaming baby one more time outside the house is a peak everything.
Yeah. It was not a good singer. They didn't even try. They're just like, no, he's terrible.
I love that the stepfather turns out to be a genuinely good guy. I like that it turns around a tired old trope, as well as just being personally satisfying to me, a person who had a stepfather who was not a good guy.
Yes.
I like that her mom keeps the cartilage piercing at the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. And we see it, the cartilage piercing that's very clearly a magnetic piercing.
Yes.
But we do see her wearing it during the wedding. And then the movie cuts a bunch of stuff from the book. I mean, obviously it did because it's like a completely different story. Right. But a bunch of little things that I want to talk about that did not age well.
Okay.
So there's a point early in the story where Annabelle in her mother's body has to ask her father/husband for money. Because it's the early 70s, so she doesn't have her own money.
No, yeah.
And he's super condescending about it. He's like, I gave you money earlier this week. What happened to it? Think really hard. Tell me what happened to the money before I give you more. Like, literally, that's how it reads. And then before he leaves for work, he's like, be a good girl and wash my shirts.
To his wife?
To his wife.
Okay.
Now, and it would be one thing if what the main character of Annabelle takes away from that was like, gross. I can't believe mom has to deal with that.
Right.
That would be one thing.
Yeah.
But instead, what she takes from this, he tells her to clean the shirts and then he leaves, and she thinks to herself, this is a direct quote, what a cute man. Imagine that cute man having to have dirty shirts. Well, I'll clean them for him. Pardon me, what? It was really just like a very weird, gross microcosm of gender politics in the 70s.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it definitely dates the... Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of things that date this text, this book also uses the R slur at one point. Now, the copy I have, I mentioned, is the original print from 1972, but I know that this book has been reprinted a couple times. So if you happened to have read a later edition, I'm super interested to know what, if anything, that got changed to. It's right at the beginning of chapter 11.
I would bet it would depend on when those.
Yeah.
Up until not that long ago.
I know, not that long ago, but that's why I'm curious.
Yeah, like I said, if there's a reprint in the last 10 years, maybe something has been changed. Anything prior to like 2010, I don't think that would have ever been even looked at. Like nobody would even think about it.
But yeah, if you read a later edition that was like printed after 1972, let me know. Message us on like one of our social media or something, and I can even give you like the sentence that it's in if you want to go look for it, because I want to know.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know.
There's this section. Okay, so I mentioned that her mom gives her a makeover, and Annabelle's super jazzed about it because now she's pretty and Boris is going to notice her. And there's this section, I'm just gonna read it. This is her inner monologue. Okay. My mind is wandering back to the telephone, which rings again. This time, it's a black friend of mine called. Let's see, called Gordon. Gordon wants to know if I'm working at Head Start on Tuesday because he is. She's like fantasizing. Okay. That she has a black friend who called her on the phone.
She's fantasizing
that she has a black friend who calls her on the phone. And then she goes on to think, now Boris knows I'm beautiful, loyal, kind, and a liberal.
She has a black friend.
She has a black friend. And always on the telephone.
I don't know how poorly that's aged. I feel like that would still be true today.
But would we say it?
No.
I haven't imagined a conversation between Boris and me yet. I think it's too late. I don't like this one. It's sort of out of control. Blah, blah, blah.
I also, just real quick, I know that's not true. There are plenty of conservatives who are black friends. It's the race thing is very complicated with whatever.
Yes.
There's a lot of layers to it.
I'm liberal because I have a black friend is so funny to me here.
Yes, that's very funny.
I'm on my way to kitchen. I'm on my way to the kitchen to get the ice because now that I am beautiful, I am also a helpful, domestic, still women's lib though person.
Still women's lib.
Still women's helpful and domestic. Still women's lib. But I'm beautiful.
Good. Women's lib women.
Yeah.
I want the right to vote and to work, but I also just want to stay at home.
But I'll take care of my man.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. That is amazing.
She also this isn't something that really aged. I mean, I guess it did age poorly, but not in the sense of the other stuff. It's just kind of unfortunate. She also refers to one of her teachers as a super straight. Which in context I think is supposed to mean that he's like straight-laced and does everything by the book.
Oh, that's definitely what that means.
But of course now it means something transphobic.
Right. Yeah, kind of, yeah.
But it was just
it
like...
meant something transphobic for like a month on YouTube, and then nobody ever said it. I literally forgot about it until you just mentioned it again.
I did too, but coming across it in this book was so jarring. And then immediately after, so funny that I had to mention it.
Yeah.
And then another thing that didn't age poorly, just aged kind of funnily. She is at one point talking to her dad and calls him daddy because he's her dad. And of course, he thinks it's his wife and is like, what? But the way I laughed.
Yeah.
Thank you, 2022 internet culture, for giving me a bright spot in this book.
That's amazing. All right, let's go ahead and talk about all the things the movie nailed.
As I expected, practically perfect in every way.
Well, we mentioned this, but Anna/Annabelle, they both have messy bedrooms. It's a huge plot point in the book. It is at least mentioned and kind of shown in the movie, so I didn't have anything else to put in this section.
Yeah, I know. I was being facetious when I said all the things the movie nailed. Yeah.
Those are all the things. I mean, as we talked about, there are a lot of elements in the movie that are pulled from the book.
We've discussed a lot of them already.
But they're changed quite a bit. Yeah. So I can't really put them in the movie nailed it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That is fair. All right, let's get to a handful of odds and ends before the final verdict.
I love the way this movie opens. The cheesy transition from the Turtles to the Simple Plan cover of Happy Together in the opening song is something that I have always loved.
It's fun. It is very, very fun. When we see Lindsay Lohan get dressed for her day at school at the beginning of this movie, and then we see her in her first outfit for like the first act of this movie before they go to dinner. I was like, boy, she is really just cosplaying Avril Lavigne in this.
Yes.
I mean, like, literally.
Like,
other than the necktie, like, she's not wearing, like, a loose necktie.
Right. They had the wherewithal to not put her in a necktie. But this was only a year after Let Go came out. Yeah. Avril was huge.
Right. No, I'm not criticizing it. I'm just saying.
And, like, it makes sense from a target audience perspective, as well as acknowledging that assuming Avril exists in this universe, Anna would absolutely be taking style cues from Avril Lavigne.
I did not have a problem with it. I thought it made perfect sense, but it was just very fun. I was like, it literally just looked like Avril Lavigne.
And it is a good segue into my next note here, which is that the thing that you have to understand about my love for this movie is that nothing to me at 14 was cooler than Lindsay Lohan in this movie. I wanted to be her so bad.
I mean, I get it.
And I was not allowed to make the aesthetic choices, but I tried, you guys. I tried so hard. I did dye my hair red at one point for a hot minute before I was made to dye it back. I do have red hair now.
I didn't know that. I actually didn't know that.
Remember when I told you were going to understand a lot of things about me after watching this movie? I took guitar lessons in high school.
I did not know that either.
I didn't really learn to play the guitar, but I did take lessons. I wore... for like most of high school, I wore a guitar pick on a chain around my neck.
Not a choker?
No, not a choker.
Okay,
it was on like
a little.
Yeah, it was on like one of those cheap little like ball chain things. Yeah. I tried so hard.
No, I get it. Yeah, she's very cool in this movie for sure. For sure. I was chuckling at the fact that the dad, the only other thing I've ever seen, not the dad, the fiance.
Yeah.
The only other thing I've ever seen that guy in is NCIS. He's been in like 8 billion seasons of NCIS. I was like, oh, it's the NCIS guy, which is hilarious. And I never, I don't think I've literally ever seen him in anything else. And I've never even seen an episode.
I don't think I've ever watched an episode of NCIS
I've seen
either.
A clip or two here or there, usually like very silly clips from that show. But I was like, oh yeah, that's the NCIS guy.
I think I've probably told you this. I don't remember. I briefly had a roommate my sophomore year of college. We didn't live together for very long because we had nothing in common. But I briefly lived with this girl who was obsessed with NCIS.
That's an interesting thing to be obsessed with.
But wait, there's more. There's more. She had like printouts of all of the characters' like headshot, like promotional headshot things.
Okay.
Pasted onto construction paper hearts.
Nice.
That she decorated her side of the room with.
Nice. Good for her. Just out here being the...
She embraced it.
That's so interesting that, you know, because you normally that, and what that would have been like 2005. There's so many other things that person could have channeled that like, fandom into.
This would have been like 2010.
Yeah, 2010. Yeah. So many other properties that you would have normally expect that.
If I had walked in and she'd had like Harry Potter characters or supernatural characters or whatever.
Pirates of the Caribbean or something.
I would have been like, okay, that tracks.
Yeah. NCIS.
But NCIS, yeah.
Is NCIS the one with the goth hacker girl? Or is that a different show?
That's either NCIS or it's the one that also has
it's not CSI.
Okay, that's
I know
the
it's
other
not
one
it is NCIS.
Of. Yeah.
Yeah, her the character's name was Abby Sciato or something, played by Polly Perrette. That is NCIS though. anyways.
Yep.
Yeah, that it's like everybody's grandpa's favorite show, and it's just like, why just a college student being real into it. To be fair, I went through a very brief stage or period in my life for a couple years where I was really into CSI, mainly because I just thought it was super cool, and then later I found out it was like 99% nonsense in terms of like the science and stuff. But I legitimately that's why I went to school, like when that's why I started as a forensic chemistry major in university for my first year, was because of CSI. I just thought it was super fascinating and super cool. I wasn't like obsessed with the characters. Like I literally did not really care about the characters at all. I just thought the show was cool.
Yeah. Not even the weirdest roommate I had in college. That's a story for another time. Speaking of rooms, though, and room decor, the depiction of Anna's room in the movie reminds me so much of my teenage bedroom. Just like tons of posters working so hard to cover old pink walls from when I was younger that I wasn't allowed to repaint.
Yep, that makes sense. I would just like to add that it is absolutely so the fiance character in this movie, Ryan, overall nice character, seems like a good guy. But there's the moment where she goes on the talk show.
Yeah.
And he does not tell her what they're doing.
Yeah.
And has her close her eyes and then brings her into the studio and is like, surprise, you're about to be on either national or local television to promote your book. Here you go. And I just want to state that is absolutely unhinged behavior, sir.
Glad to know that you would never do that to me.
What in the world? He's like, well, I didn't want you to be nervous. It's like, okay. But she didn't get to prepare or anything, and now she's just nope.
And then the like host opens with a terrible question. Her first question is just, tell me about your new book. It's terrible. It's so broad and open-ended. Even if you knew about the book, you wouldn't know how to answer that.
Yeah. She's just like, give us this. I was actually really hoping what was going to happen in that moment when she asked her that question, because she was holding the book, that she was just going to start like trying to like secretly read the synopsis, like the back of the book cover. I was really thinking that was going to be the joke in that moment, was she was going to like, well, it's, and like read the back of the cover, and then the host was going to be like, are you reading the back? I really thought that was going to be the joke, but whatever. It was still a very fun scene.
Moving forward in the film, though, I want to amend my previous statement that actually the only thing cooler than Lindsay Lohan in this movie is Jamie Lee Curtis shredding on the guitar off stage during the audition.
It is fun, yeah.
She looks pretty cool.
She looks pretty cool. This moment cracked me up in the movie because like they're all watching, and Lindsay Lohan on stage, Tess as Anna is just standing there not doing anything.
Yeah.
And they're all like, and then eventually Anna as Tess comes down, plugs her guitar in backstage, and starts playing the guitar, and just in time for her big solo.
Yeah.
And on stage, Lindsay Lohan is doing barely anything.
Yeah, she's so clearly not playing. But every single person in the crowd is like, oh my God, it's amazing. It's like, you would know, even if you knew very little about guitar. Yeah, she's not moving her hand on the frets at all.
Barely moving. Yeah, it's just so clear she is not playing anything that is coming out of that guitar, that you would have to be like completely oblivious to not realize that. And I thought that was very funny. Again, it's whatever. It's a silly, conceit for the film. It was just, I thought that was very funny.
Lindsay Lohan's purple bridesmaid's dress. The only thing that I don't like that she wears in this movie. I think it's very ugly.
I mean, it's very dated for sure, but I don't know.
Ugly dress.
Fair enough. I'll take your word for it. I don't have a lot of opinions on dresses, but my last note was that we love an end credit music performance as a classic rom-com comedy. Trope is to have, especially in a movie where like the main characters are part of a band, have them play over the end credits is a classic, and I was excited to see we got that in this movie. But I could not remember watching it, so I was like, wait, did we get a Lindsay Lohan short-lived music career? Like, was that a thing? And I couldn't remember.
Kind of. She was mostly making Disney stuff at this time.
Yeah.
And trying to launch simultaneous singing careers for their leading ladies is a pretty common thing that Disney does.
I'm aware of that, which is
Yeah.
why I asked the question. Well, that and seeing her here, but I couldn't remember if we had that.
I don't think she had any like bigger hits, but I definitely had some songs by her on my high
Okay,
school
so
iPod.
she definitely like released songs.
Yeah,
and
she
stuff,
released some. It might have been mostly movie tie-in songs.
It wouldn't
I don't
surprise
remember.
me. Yeah. That would not surprise me. But yeah, it wasn't. I mean, on Wikipedia, the first sentence: Lindsay Lohan is an American actress and singer. So there you go. But yeah, okay. Yeah, it's like because normally I can like obviously Hilary Duff and stuff like
Right. Yeah.
I remember.
I mean,
them
I
having,
definitely had I had all the music from this on my iPod in high school, and I had like her big song from Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen too.
Okay. All right. So yeah, definitely had the tie-in music career.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Before we get to the final verdict, we wanted to remind you can do us a giant favor by heading over to patreon.com/thisfilmislit. Support us there for $5 and up a month. Well, you got multiple levels, but $5 and up a month, you get access to our bonus content, which we just last month released an episode on Midsommar. If you want to hear us talk about Midsommar for a while, go really into the weeds on that one, break that down. And then next month, I don't know if we've revealed it yet, or this month. Sorry.
Well, we did on the actual Patreon.
We revealed
episode.
it on Patreon, but I don't know if we.
But yeah, we're gonna be talking about Dirty Dancing.
Dirty Dancing. So yeah, if you want to hear us talk about Dirty Dancing in a couple weeks, go support us for $5 and up a month. You can listen to all of our back catalog of bonus content and everything going forward. And yeah, go check out all of the perks and stuff you can get over on Patreon. Also, you can do us a giant favor by heading over to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Goodreads, any of those platforms. Search for This Film Is Lit. Follow us, like, subscribe, whatever you got to do. Ring that bell and just follow us and interact and let us know what you thought about Freaky Friday. We would love to hear it, and we'll talk about what you had to say about Freaky Friday on our next prequel episode, which will be out in 1 week's time. All right, Katie, it's time for the final verdict.
Now, are you ready for your sentence?
Sentence? But there must be a verdict first.
Sentence first, verdict afterward.
So despite this being one of my favorite movies, I actually didn't know that it was based on a book until pretty recently, when I happened upon a copy of the book at a thrift store. Got very excited in that thrift store. I hated this book. I hated it so much. It made me so angry, and I think it would have made me just absolutely blow a gasket had I read it as a teenager. The major difference between these two pieces of media is that the book is parental wish fulfillment about a teenage girl who learns not to be a stupid, dramatic teenage girl, and also how to be a sufficiently girly and a good little agent of the patriarchy, while the movie is about a mother and daughter who start out at odds, learn that the other person's life is more complex than they thought, and end up at mutual understanding and love. And I'm sorry, that's better.
Way better.
The movie isn't perfect, and there are definitely elements that are problematic, but the narrative is so much stronger, the characters and character arcs are so much more interesting, and the movie actually takes its target audience into consideration instead of preaching at them about how great and wise their mom is, actually. The book's approach comes off as so condescending and hellbent on the child learning a lesson. I just absolutely could not stand it. The movie wins this one by a long shot.
There you go. Again, everything you had said as we were discussing over the course of this episode, I was like, "Oh, this sounds terrible.
Yeah.
I don't like this." Is this the first and only instance of Mamaganda in the wild?
I don't know, and I don't know because there's an adaptation of this from the 70s.
Yeah, I would imagine it's probably closer to the book,
I would
if I had to
imagine it
guess.
has to be. I've never seen it.
Yeah, sounds terrible. Sounds just truly awful. Katie, what's next?
Up next, we're going to be talking about another property that I've been wanting to cover for a pretty long time, and that is A Room with a View.
Yeah.
A novel by E.M. Forster and 1985 film starring Helena Bonham Carter.
Isn't this the movie? It's got Helena Bonham Carter in it?
Yes, it does. And one of her earliest roles, I believe.
Okay. There's somebody. Oh, that's what it was. Hold on. I think it's the director. This movie was somehow relevant to somebody. That's what it is. The director of A Room with a View did The Remains of the Day.
Yes.
So that's the connection. I was like, I know we talked about, like, I remember talking about A Room with a View, or at least mentioning it on an episode like not that long ago. Director of The Remains of the Day did this film. I know nothing about this. Like The Remains of the Day, I don't even know what the plot of this is.
I love this movie.
All right, well, that'll be fun. We'll,
there are aspects of it that are iffy from a modern perspective, but I love this movie.
Okay, well, we will get into that and preview it in 1 week's time on our prequel episode. We'll also get your feedback on Freaky Friday, talk all about that, and learn a little something. So until that time, guys, gals, non-binary pals, and everybody else,
keep reading books,
watching movies,
and keep being awesome.